About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
And this is Noetic Moments, where we explore the field of research that discovers what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be very different if we understood it better. I'm Ruth Miller, a longtime student of consciousness studies, cybernetics, and anthropology, and through this series of programs, I'm explaining some of the ideas and experiments and introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research. I'll also explore some relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org. Now, normally, in the world of medicine and psychology, people talk about consciousness as simply being awake, aware, knowing what's going on around us, and a lot of the current science is focused on that. In the field of noetics, though, as it's emerged over the past 100 years, consciousness is much more. It's the processes and products of the mind, both in our awareness and outside of it. It's often the very profound human experiences that we have. And ultimately, consciousness appears to be what connects us all. Now, so far in this series, we've looked at a number of models of what consciousness is, starting at the beginning, where Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were able to apply scientific approaches to the mind and how it functions. We went on into the mid-century with Charles Tart's work in the 1960s on states of consciousness, and Julian Jaynes, who based his emerging understandings on neurology, relating consciousness to the separation of right and left hemispheres in our brain. We looked at some of the field models of the mind that have been developed by Kurt Lewin, Rupert Sheldrake, and others, trying to explain how it is that mind affects and is affected by the body and other things faster than nerve signals can travel. Then we began to consider how quantum mechanics might be involved in this process, with the work of David Bohm, Dana Zohar, and Amit Goswami, among others. We also looked at the global brain, or noosphere, as described by Teilhard de Chardin in the 50s and Peter Russell in the 70s and 80s, and Ervin Laszlo in the 90s and the early 2000s. And we explored the field of transpersonal psychology, which was founded in the 1970s to apply some of these newer understandings in therapy and in research. We then looked at Bruce Lipton and Candace Pert, who described molecules of emotion and the epigenetic effects of belief. And for the past couple of weeks, we've explored some of the experimental results supporting these new ideas about consciousness. We looked at the Global Consciousness Project and its ongoing mapping of humanity's responses to major events. We looked at the concept of presentiment and the sense of being stared at, demonstrating that the body responds and the mind seems to be aware several seconds before the eyes and ears actually perceive. You can catch up on those past shows on the KXCR.net archives. Click on that little cloud up in the banner at the top of the screen. And you can go to our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you'll also find links to the clips, books, and authors that I mention on the show. Our focus today is on what is increasingly called coherence. It's a state of consciousness in which the heart, the mind, and the emotions are all in alignment, such that the electromagnetic signals from the heart function like a conductor in a symphony orchestra, and the brain and the other organs begin to work in harmony with each other and the heart for the well-being of the whole. We'll be looking at the work of two leading researchers in this field today, Joe Dispenza and Roland McCratty of the Heartmath Institute. So let's look at what Roland McCratty has to say about coherence.
I think most people have sort of an intuitive sense of the word coherence and what it means. If you look it up in most dictionaries, the first definition is the quality of somebody's speech, right? So hopefully I'm able to put my words together in a way that today in our chat that gives a coherent meaning, right? And if I had a little bit too much to drink last night, maybe I'm coming in and I'm kind of uttering nonsense, I'm incoherent, right? But it's also used in physics and in a similar way, actually, when you dig a little bit deeper. But coherence in the physics side and the science side is always talking about usually a complex system. It has a lot of parts, and how all those parts are, how well or not those parts are working together. So in a coherent system, and this applies to whether it's atoms, cells, bodies, cosmos, social units, how well are those individual parts working together. So in a coherent system, it always implies and means that the individual parts have to be somehow connected and communicating with each other, that there's a harmonious order that where the system is working together in a way that is energy efficient and gives rise to something greater than the individual parts. The activity and within our own bodies, brains, nervous systems, immune systems, hormonal systems, how well are all those systems working together? So if we're personally coherent, we're working at our optimal function. Everything's working in harmony and aligned and energy efficient, right? And as it turns out, that's best reflected in the rhythms of the heart.
So McCratty and his colleagues came to understand this idea of coherence over 30 years as they studied what the heart is, what it does, and its much broader effects than, as they say, an efficient pump that sustains life. From the website, our research suggests that the heart is also an access point to a source of wisdom and intelligence that we can call upon to live our lives with more balance, creativity, and enhance intuitive capacities. All of these are important for increasing personal effectiveness, they say. They have written a book, Science of the Heart, explaining the role of the heart in human performance. They say for more than 31 years, the Heartmath Institute Research Center has explored the physiological mechanisms by which the heart and brain communicate, and how the activity of the heart influences our perceptions, emotions, intuition, and health. Early in our research, they say, we asked, among other questions, why people experience the feeling or sensation of love and other regenerative emotions as well as heartache in the physical area of the heart. In the early 1990s, they say, we were among the first to conduct research that not only looked at how stressful emotions affect the activity in the autonomic nervous system and the hormonal and immune systems, but also at the effects of emotions such as appreciation, compassion, and care. Over the years, they say, we have conducted many studies that have utilized many different physiological measures, such as EEG, brain waves, SCL, skin conductance, ECG, heart waves, BP, blood pressure, and hormone levels, etc. Consistently, however, it was heart rate variability, or heart rhythms, that stood out as the most dynamic and reflective indicator of one's emotional states and, therefore, current stress and cognitive processes. So that was where their research was taking them, and that is what they have been building their work on since then, because a huge part of their work has been to help people learn how to guide that heart rhythm and to bring the rest of the body and mind into alignment with it. The Heartmath Institute has been offering for many decades now, 30 years, way of thinking about what the heart is and what it does that far exceeds the normal scientific approach and begins to bring their physiological studies into alignment with what we are calling consciousness studies. Now, Roland McCready came to this research as what he calls a psychophysiologist. He teaches at the University in Florida and continues to work with the Heartmath Institute as their director of research. So let's take a look at what the Heartmath Institute has to say about what it is that they do.
At the Heartmath Institute Research Center, we have spent decades unraveling the innate intelligence of the heart and the potential of its core qualities like compassion and care to affect real change on an individual and collective level. Our global interconnectivity research is illuminating just how important a role we can all play in uplifting and unifying the collective global field environment, which is essential now more than ever. Through the support of our donors, the Heartmath Institute is now working to expand the Global Consciousness Project, a collaborative effort between HMI lead scientists and citizen scientists. Originally started out of Princeton University by Roger Nelson, the GCP's global network of random number generators has shown convincing evidence that human consciousness, especially emotions of love and compassion, does in fact modulate the global field. We hope that expanding on these findings will inspire and encourage more people around the world to benefit from increasing their own heart-based practices.
So the folks at the Heartmath Institute are building on the work that we looked at a while back in the Global Consciousness Project. Once we recognize that the human emotions affect electromagnetic fields in computers and other things, and that electromagnetic fields affect human emotions, once we learn how to bring the heart and the mind and the emotions into alignment, we see that that field is affected more strongly, and we may be able to make a greater difference. Later in this show, we'll look at ways that that can be done. The other major work being done in the area of coherence is the work of a man called Joe Dispenza. Now, Joe Dispenza originally was a chiropractor, but he began to realize that there was a lot more going on in the body than just the physical and material structure of the spine, which is huge, but not sufficient. So he went on to study neuroscience and what's called neuroplasticity, which is the ability of brain neurons to a shift. We had thought for generations, science had taught, that the neurons in the brain were fixed once adulthood was accomplished. But research over the last 30 years has demonstrated, and Joe Dispenza has been building on that research, showing that neurons can be trained to do different things, and new neurons can grow. He also went on to study quantitative electroencephalogram measurements, which is the EEG structure, and epigenetics, which is what we talked about a little bit with Bruce Lipton. Mind-body medicine, there is a lot of work going on in that area, and we'll be touching more on that. And ultimately, the brain-heart coherence of the type that the Heartmath Institute has been teaching. Dispenza's work has been very popular, and he's been going all over the world offering workshops, offering trainings, helping people break out of their normal assumptions about what the body can do, what the mind can do, how the two affect each other. His workshops you can see on YouTube pieces of. You can go to his website, and you can also explore some of the scientific research that he has done. For example, with the University of California at San Diego, exploring some of these ideas and how they work, what are the biological markers of meditation. He worked with the University of Auckland in Australia to analyze brain scan research from the workshops that he's been doing. He's presented all kinds of papers with other scientists in various conferences and so on. So that both Dispenza and the Heartmath Institute have been working very carefully to make sure that what they are doing fits the world of the sciences. And that is so powerful and so important in our culture today. Now, what Dispenza is actually accomplishing can be illustrated by the following narrative.
So imagine then you have an inner army of plasma cells, of white blood cells that release immunoglobulins, antibodies that are strong defenses against internal invaders on a microscopic level, that memorize those invaders, pass the information to the legion of white blood cells so that your immune system can tolerate and defend you in any foreign agent in your inner world. Now, our research has shown, along with several other people, that when people can trade those survival emotions, those stress hormones like fear and anxiety and pain and suffering and anger and frustration and judgment and competition for more elevated emotions, more heart-centered emotions, it is those heart-centered emotions that we are able to open our heart and feel kindness and compassion and to have a love for life and to feel gratitude and appreciation and really work with our body to elevate our emotional state. It makes sense then that if we do this properly, we are going to convert from the gas pedal of the sympathetic nervous system to teach our body to break that pattern of constantly being in survival. And when we start to feel elevated emotions, we feel less separate from everyone and everything, and we start to feel more connected to everyone and everything. And when we do this properly and we start to open our hearts, our research shows that we begin to strengthen our immune system. In fact, our research shows that for 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day, if you practiced feeling those elevated emotions, you would begin to release an immunoglobulin called immunoglobulin A, which is your body's primary defense against bacteria and viruses. It is the body's natural flu shot that creates an immunity to the environment, both macroscopically and microscopically. So then 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day, changing your mood and breaking the stress response and teaching your body that it feels safe enough to be in the present moment that it can create, that it's moving out of survival. Doing this properly, the body's so objective that it does not know the difference between the experience and the environment that's creating the emotion of love and gratitude and you doing it by volition. Your body begins to move more into the present moment, and here comes the parasympathetic nervous system. And now its job is to restore, to rebalance, to repair, to increase metabolic functions, to release 1,300 different chemicals that can begin to restore and repair your body. The body now is moving out of emergency, and there are resources to heal.
Sounds like pretty powerful stuff, doesn't it? It's amazing to think that simply by bringing the heart and the mind and the feelings in alignment and by focusing on what they call heart-centered emotions, we begin to actually start a process of healing the body. And the Heartmath Institute suggests we're actually in a process of healing all of humanity through the global consciousness that was illustrated in that Global Consciousness Project. So what I'd like to do now is invite you to explore what this actually might look like. And I'm going to let McCready tell you about how this works. This is going to be from a video from the Heartmath Institute.
When we fall into stressful emotions, our heart rhythm pattern becomes jagged and erratic, sending signals of incoherence throughout the body. This creates a distinct disharmony between our heart, brain, hormonal, and nervous systems. This can cause more stress, more mental fog, and even compromise our immune system function.
Practicing coherence creates balance and cooperation rather than competition and stress between our heart, mind, and emotions.
Our heart rhythm research has shown that generating feelings like appreciation, love, or compassion creates a cascade of positive effects throughout the entire body. Our heart sends a smooth, coherent signal to the brain that brings all of our systems into alignment, creating clearer thinking, emotional stability, and more effective choices.
Much of our stress is created by the indecisions between our heart, mind, and emotions, especially when they all have their own voices and choices.
It's the lack of balance between our mental and emotional systems that encourages much of our impatience and lack of resilience.
Fortunately, these stress traps can be managed. Try this coherence technique. Focus your attention in the area of your heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. With each breath, draw in feelings of kindness, appreciation, or care for someone or something in your life. Try to experience a feeling you have for a loved one, pet, or a special place in nature. You can also focus on breathing feelings like ease, peace, or a sense of adventure.
Believe it or not, that's what we're talking about. That's all it takes. When we can do that, as Joe Dispenza suggested, for on the order of 10 minutes every day, 3 days in a row, we've increased our immune response by several percentage points, and we've made our whole life feel much more peaceful, calm, and doable. So, I invite you to consider this possibility as a practice. We've talked about reverie, we've talked about contemplation, and now I suggest you explore the possibility of coherence in the brain, mind, and heart. Well, okay, that sound tells us that it's time to bring this into the world going on around us. And what is going on around us is the emergence of yet another strain of the virus, the coronavirus. The Omicron strain is generating new versions of it. And isn't that interesting? So can you see how what we've been talking about today might directly be relevant? If finding that place of coherence, finding that heartfelt feeling for a few minutes every day can improve our immune system, perhaps we can begin to turn around this pandemic simply by how we are feeling and thinking day after day after day. Far more effectively, some might suggest, than by taking vaccines or whatever. And I'm not saying do the one instead of the other. But I am suggesting that we can at the very least supplement everything else we've been doing to not be affected by this virus with this enhancement of our immune system. And with the Heartmath Institute, I'm also going to suggest that the global consciousness, the noosphere that we have been talking about in this show, may well be affected, and very likely is affected, when many of us are engaging in the kind of thing we're calling coherence in the study of noetics and consciousness. I hope you'll consider the possibility. Well, that's all we can do for today's show. The next time we get together, we'll look at more of the research being done in an attempt to understand what consciousness is, what it really does, and how we can experience life differently when we use it fully. Though we're out of time for today, remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where there is always a list of titles and other resources referred to on every show, along with archived past shows, and where you can send me your comments and questions, which I'll do my best to get answered the next time we're on the air. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments. at KXCR Community Radio, 90.7 FM in Florence, Oregon. Have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about noetic sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.